Welcome to Head Start, the weekly podcast designed to help Liberty and Quarry adult and student ministry life group leaders and, well, anyone else who's tuning in to get a jump on preparing for the upcoming lesson. This week, we are continuing our journey through the Hope Sermon Series. We're diving deeper into how biblical hope anchors our hearts and shapes our perspective. No matter what life throws our way, whether you're leading a discussion or just wanting to reflect more personally, we're here to walk you through the key themes, scripture, and takeaways to help you engage more deeply in God's Word. So,
wow, that was different.
Well, changing things up every once in a while.
From the beginning, it's just the hearing "Welcome to Head Start" instead of Head Start is a weekly podcast or whatever it is that you said.
Shaking things up, baby.
Shake and bake, baby.
Well,
I love
it. Speaking of shaking and baking, let's think about, because there's no football to talk about, there's no basketball, and I mean, I don't know that anybody listening really cares about the NBA.
Or NHL, or Formula One for that matter. It's fine.
Any of those things. But we do care about cars because they carry us. They carry us.
They do.
They move us
They are
from
the donkeys of the day.
To B. But for some of us, we enjoy cars, the car culture, for something a little more than just transportation from A to B. And Brian, I know that to be the case about yourself.
Definitely.
When did you get interested in this little car culture thing?
Yeah, I don't really know when it kind of first picked up, but I'm a man now, which means I was a young boy. I don't. Okay, anyway. So I'm a man now, which means I was a young boy. That's how it works, by the way, just for anybody who's listening with cultural questions.
Wondering.
And, I was fascinated by all things speed and engineering and, just any of that kind of stuff. And a lot of that played into the desire to go into the Air Force and design planes later in life and be a pilot and things like that. But I remember one particular story, and I was already into cars at this point. We didn't, Dad would change the oil and other things like that at the house, but most of the family car maintenance, he would take it into a shop and do it that way, which I think is fair and fine. But one day, Dad brought home a magazine from the Chevy dealer on the Camaro. Now, the Camaro was outgoing. It was 2002, and so the fourth generation Camaro, which had been out, I think, since 1993. Good year. 1993 was good year. And 93 to 2002 was when that generation of the Camaro ran, and there was a corresponding Pontiac Firebird, and I just thought they were awesome. I thought they looked so stinking cool. I wanted one, and that was when I became a Camaro fan. And shortly after that, I think that really, took the interest in cars and ratcheted it up, beyond, a love for Matchbox and Pinewood Derby and those kinds of things. I just became an expert on every car that was on the road. I could see a car a long way away and tell you exactly what it was. Even the trim level, by its headlights or its sheet metal or just whatever. So I really remember that around that age, 9, 10, 11 was when I started to become really interested.
I, too, very similar to you. Now, my dad never did any work on cars, but we had all sorts of cars.
Yeah.
When I say we, what I mean is he.
He, yeah.
There's just this revolving doors of cars that came through our house, and I just remember appreciating and enjoying, and
that's cool,
and just thinking it was super cool.
Now, see, we were totally utilitarian. We had minivans, and the coolest car that we had when I was growing up was a Jeep Grand Cherokee. It wasn't much. Did your dad have cool cars, or what did he?
Yeah, there were some cool cars, but he had cool car friends, right?
Okay.
So as I can remember, as I just turned 16, and a buddy of his did drag racing.
Nice.
And so he had two cars that he'd run.
Yeah.
He'd run a Pro Stock car. It was a Pinto.
I mean,
with big, fat, meaty tires. So he trailered that one, but he also had an ET car, which is a street legal, and it was a Duster.
Yeah.
And so Dad was like, hey, we're going to go with dude to go, to Montgomery to the drag racing.
Yeah.
And so we go to his house, and we're about to leave, and dude throws me the keys to the to the Duster.
No way.
I'm like, are you kidding me?
How old are you?
I was barely 16.
Oh, my
It
goodness,
was
how
super
fun.
cool.
That's awesome.
But great memories. I could talk about cars for a long
I
time.
know, I could too. That's
And
the danger.
but we should probably. I so easily when it comes to cars, I so easily get distracted.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Yeah.
we'll ride down 280 and we'll ride up next to a car that's got a little rumble to it.
Yep.
And I'll just roll the window down, turn the radio down.
Just listen.
Tanya, just listen to that.
That's awesome.
So,
that is awesome.
But that's what I sort of grew up in.
Yeah.
But my practice though is so utilitarian.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm too frugal. Maybe that's the word. Cheap, maybe. Trying to be sweet.
Cheap.
But I really do appreciate and enjoy being around cars and things of that nature.
Yeah,
So
that's fun.
we think about in just a little bit, we're going to transition to what we're looking at in the passage today. But before we get to the passage, thinking about personal invites.
Yeah.
I had the privilege. Well, actually, the other night I'm coming home and. Actually, I'm home, and Marie had left, and she called and said, "Hey, my car sounds funny." Flat tire. So I had to. We went and changed the tire, and the next day I took the tire to a local tire place, and it was strange, like a rip in the tire. There was nothing in it.
Yep.
It was so strange. Anyhow, I talked with they patched it, didn't plug it, but patched it.
Yeah.
And so we'll find out if that works.
Yeah,
But in time. But was able to converse with the guy because I was there early. Talked with the guy who runs the office there. Had a really good conversation. He's new to Alabama. Been here just a few years and has not connected in a church. And so was able to invite him. Actually invited him to What's at Stake.
Oh, cool.
So gave him my cell phone number and I'm praying. He didn't commit.
Yeah.
He said he's going to do all that he can. He had a dental appointment. Wasn't sure if he's going to be able to.
Yeah.
So he said that he would text me. So I'm just really praying that he'll be able to show up and be able to engage.
Stirs him up to come. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, we just want to. The purpose of again leaders is we want to keep this in front of ourselves, right? Our need to engage those that are around us.
Yeah.
Whether that's our neighbor. We reached out recently to one of our neighbors trying to set up a time for them to come over and let's eat dessert together, right? And so they're like, yeah, let's figure this, so hopefully we can do that soon. But just this need to engage people, right?
Yeah.
Let's not walk around in a bubble, closing our garage doors and never talking to people.
Yeah, that's
just the importance of engaging those around us, giving personal invites, building relationships, giving invites, looking for opportunities to have gospel conversations.
Love your neighbor as yourself, right?
It's almost like we read that in Scripture.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's coming up.
Yep.
It's interesting how many things are connected already, right? So we talked about cars, and your personal invite had to do with a car that needed attention. And I don't know if you noticed this, but we'll dive in here in a moment to the passage. And you said when it comes to cars, you can get so easily distracted, right?
Yep.
And today in the passage, we're going to talk about a character who did just that.
Just so easily distracted. So back in the day, you and I worked out together at CrossFit. I think you're still doing those kinds of things. Not me so much. But one of the things that we would do to loosen up is you grab, you're standing, you grab your ankle and pull it up, and you're standing on one leg.
Yep.
So you're stretching that quadricep.
Yep.
Right, and one of the things that I found, because I'm starting to run again, and the quadriceps, hamstrings, those things always they need some attention.
Yeah.
And so what I find is whenever I do that stretch, I really have a hard time standing up.
Huh. Yeah.
Yep. Because
need a balancing point.
Yeah, and so I found though that in order to help me to balance, to help me not be distracted, is to focus on something.
Yeah.
Right, to have this clear focus, and as I keep my eyes on a specific point, on a balance point, I'm able to stay focused no matter what. Right,
that's good.
And so today we're going to look at in our study a spiritual application of this point. Right, how, if we can reduce distraction, how if we increase our focus.
Yeah.
How can we be more effective?
Yeah.
Right? So as you begin your lesson, leaders, you'll see on the front end of this, it gives that sort of that illustration of not being distracted, being focused.
Yep.
And the first two questions is, when have you tried to learn to balance in a specific way? Okay? So that would be a super cool conversation to have on the front end of the lesson before you ever talk about the passage.
Yeah.
When have you tried to learn to balance in a specific way? A follow-up question is, how have you experienced the value of focusing on a certain point to enhance balance?
That's good.
Right? So,
Yeah.
man, these questions are super rich, and it's like setting the ball on the tee, ready to dive in to the passage. So,
here we go.
Let's
do that now. Yeah. So we drop straight into the middle of the Gospel of Luke with this passage, and it's a short passage, just 5 verses. But man, there's a lot loaded into this, and so be ready for hopefully an engaging discussion that's going to lean more toward practical application rather than really deep. There's not a ton of like deep theological import in this passage, right? It's kind of simple, and the point comes across with clarity. But I do want to give you some context, leaders and listeners, for those of you who just feel like you've been dropped into the middle of the book. We are in the segment.
Because you have been.
It's because you have been, yeah. We're in the segment of the Gospel of Luke where Jesus is making his journey to Jerusalem. And that began in Luke chapter 9, verse 51. Luke tells us when the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. The original language there is actually like he stiffened his face like a flint, like he made his face hardened in the direction of Jerusalem. So Jesus was determined, even though he knew what was going to happen, to go to Jerusalem, right? And so this section is dedicated in Luke's gospel to what it means to follow Jesus, right? Discipleship, devotion, and priorities in light of the coming kingdom. There's a quick story about Samaria. Jesus wants to go through Samaria on the way to Jerusalem, so he sends a couple of disciples ahead of him to ask Samaria to make preparations so that he can stay. And Samaria says, well, no, he's going to Jerusalem? Well, we don't want anything to do with him then, so keep on going, buddy. And so a couple of Jesus' disciples are like, Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven to consume them? And Jesus is like, no, that's not what it's about, right? Immediately after that, there's this strange episode where Jesus picks up a few random want-to-be followers, and the question that you walk away from that encounter with is, are they really ready? This is the part where he's like, Lord, I want to follow you, and Jesus is like, well, foxes have dens, and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. It's like, what a weird response, right? And then another guy, Jesus tells another guy to follow me, and the guy says, well, let me go and bury my dad first. And Jesus is like, hey, let the dead bury their own dead. I mean, you can tell in Jesus' mind, he is 100% set on the mission ahead of him, and he wants his followers to be the same way. Now, a little bit later, he sends out the 72. They go on mission into the towns, the villages that Jesus is going to go through on his way to Jerusalem. And so basically he talks about how Galilee behind them had rejected his influence as the Messiah. Samaria had not welcomed him. So the question is, what will the towns of Judea do, right? Now, there's a brief pause because we have a long story in Luke chapter 10 that everybody will be familiar with. And the point here is that it's not all about the towns. Like, you can summarize the response of a town, Bethsaida, Chorazin, are a couple of the ones that Jesus talks about. But it's also about the way that individuals respond to the work of Jesus.
Sure.
And that's where the story of the Good Samaritan comes in, right? These disciples had just asked Jesus, do you want us to call down fire from heaven and burn up the towns of Samaria that rejected you? And Jesus says no. And then he tells a story where the main character, the hero, is a Samaritan. So again, in the context of Luke, the question is, in this passage, what does it mean to follow Jesus? And the answer is, it means to offer him undistracted devotion. All right? This looks like what Jesus said in response to the man who said, Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And this is where the Good Samaritan story kicks off. But Jesus' first answer is, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your strength, all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So the guy says, well, who's my neighbor? And that's, we get into that story. But don't miss that. Love for neighbor is critical to following Jesus. It is. It's critical. But love for God smokes it.
Yep.
Like, love your neighbor as yourself, but love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your strength, right?
So the picture that I have in my mind is like the loving your neighbor as yourself. It's a byproduct.
That's right.
Of my unconsuming or my consuming,
all
consuming fire and passion for loving God.
That's exactly right.
Because I love, but in the way that God has shown love toward others, right? Because of that, then I'm naturally gonna.
It becomes a great gauge. Like if you find yourself unloving of your neighbor, then you got to start asking the question.
Okay, we're gonna need to wrap this up.
Yeah. Move on to the next subject. All right, let's do just that because we dive into verse 38, right at the end of the Good Samaritan story, where Jesus exposes this teacher of the law and then tells him to go and do the same. Verse 38 in Luke chapter 10 says, while they were traveling, he entered a village and were introduced to a woman named Martha. Now, the Gospel of John gives us the most detail about Martha. There's a triplet of siblings that we're introduced to. There may have been more, but these are the three that are mentioned: Mary, Martha, and their brother Lazarus. Lazarus should be a familiar character. He's the one that Jesus raised from the dead in chapter 11. These siblings live in a town or community called Bethany, which John tells us is not far from Jerusalem, just a couple miles away, or a little bit less than 2 miles, actually. And all three of them, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, are very close to Jesus. Now, Martha welcomes Jesus into their home. The original Greek word there implies like you're receiving this person hospitably. You're entertaining them. This is a formal invitation to be a guest. And so there were some responsibilities of the host in ancient times. Today, we can kind of see remnants of our responsibilities as hosts. But a lot of times we just want kind of a laid back, hey, come hang out with us. And there's no agenda. We may have a meal, we may not. Might have dessert, might not. Might hop on the Nintendo Switch and play Mario Kart with each other.
Sure.
You just, there's not as much traditional convention as there was then. But the host had actual moral and social duty back then, according to the customs of ancient Near Eastern people. And even the Old Testament law, you think of, go back and read, leaders, Genesis 18, where Abraham welcomes his visitors that he has. And it's like he's hustling and bustling to make sure that there's food and that they're taken care of, right, on their journey. Leviticus 19:33 and 34 also kind of lays this down as law, that when a foreigner comes into town, you're going to love and take care of him just like you would yourself. So some of the expectations of the service that would be provided by a host, there would be foot washing, right? Jesus actually calls somebody out for these things earlier in the gospel, right? Nobody washed my feet. You're supposed to give me a kiss on the way in. Nobody gave me a kiss, right? And so, foot washing. There was a kiss of greeting. The guest would typically be anointed with oil, and then they were given water, provisions, and rest. And you can see this all throughout the Bible. This is just kind of how hosts welcome people into their home. Then, this is critical, there was the meal. We're going to eat. And we're going to eat good,
Sure, yeah.
Now, the quality depended on the guest. So think about that. Martha is welcoming the Lord, Jesus, the King of Kings, into her home. So you tell me, just how far is she going to go?
She's probably going to bring out the fine china.
That's exactly right. We are breaking out the expensive glassware. And I think that needs to be... It needs to be emphasized, right?
Sure.
Because Martha's going to get rebuked in this passage.
Yeah.
But we need to have some sympathy for Martha because what she was doing is totally understandable.
She was living within the custom of the day.
She was living within the custom of the day. And we all probably would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
Most of us would have, right? She's taking care of these many things. Now, we're told that Martha, in verse 39, had a sister named Mary. And Mary, on the other hand, was not concerned with preparations.
Nope.
She sat at the Lord's feet.
Yeah.
And she listened to what he said. This is conventional language for students and teacher relationships, right? To go and sit at their feet. It's kind of like you can imagine almost like a kindergarten class, how the teacher would sit with a book, and we would all sit on the floor crisscross applesauce, right?
Yep.
And we would listen to what our teacher said. Same sort of language that we're using here for the school of Jesus as the teacher. Now, it's important to highlight that this would have been considered inappropriate. Mary was a woman.
Yep.
And as a woman, she should have been doing what Martha was doing, getting the house ready, serving, preparing, all that kind of thing. She most certainly should not have been sitting at Jesus' feet and learning from him. There's some quotations and things that I'm going to share with us real quick about other religious leaders back in the day, Jewish leaders in particular.
Sure.
It's called rabbinic tradition, so the tradition and teachings of the rabbis. And it comes from an organized complex of those teachings called the Mishnah, which was compiled a little bit later, 200 AD, but it reveals some of their thought patterns. Potentially even they're working against Christianity at the time. They're kind of like coming back at Christianity, which Roman people were actually making fun of and saying it's a religion for women and for slaves, right?
Okay.
And the Jews were like, well, hey, that's not us. Like, this is a macho religion. This is a manly religion.
Sure.
So here's a couple of quotes from the Mishnah regarding women sitting at the feet of a teacher. One says, "May the words of the Torah be burned. They should not be handed over to women."
Wow.
So better for the teaching to go up in flames than to be taught to women, right? The Rabbi Eliezer, who's also quoted in the Mishnah, says something very similar. The words of Torah should be burned rather than entrusted to a woman. And then one more. He who teaches his daughter Torah, the instruction, the law, is like one who teaches her, and then I have a hard time pronouncing this word. I just lost it. One who teaches her lasciviousness.
Okay, yes.
So that's like lewdness, lustful behavior, right? Seduction.
Okay.
So the person who teaches his daughter Torah is like someone who
Oh, my
teaches her
goodness.
how to
Wow.
be seductive.
And
right?
this was writings, you said
Somewhat contemporary with the New Testament. A little bit later is when they were organized. But remember, like, the Bible wasn't really organized until, 100, 150, 200 AD.
Yep,
The Mishnah is organized around 200 AD. So, again,
similar time frame.
The thought patterns pre-exist the writing.
Sure.
So this is the way that people talked and thought
Wow.
in the same time as Jesus.
So Mary's actions were unconventional.
And Jesus' acceptance of Mary's
Is
actions.
unconventional.
Radical.
Yeah.
Radical. Yeah.
And so Martha's attitude, and we'll see this attitude in just a little bit.
Yeah.
I can when Martha speaks here in a little bit, I can see her hands on her hips.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sass is strong with this one.
Yeah.
The contrast is drilled down in verse 40. Luke's like, hey, in case you didn't get the point, what one sister is doing and what the other sister is doing, verse 40. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, right? He could not have been more intentional with his wording than he was. This word for distracted is like overburdened, right? Her attention is pulled away concerning her many services, the things that she had to take care of, all those things that we mentioned earlier. And so here's what's interesting. Martha leaves those tasks. She puts the dishes down for a minute, pauses the oven or cools it down maybe, leaves it, and goes to approach Jesus. Now, we don't know exactly how this played out because Luke doesn't give us indescribable detail.
Sure.
But remember, Jesus is teaching the circle of disciples here. So she must have gone up to him in the midst of his teaching, right? Hey, teacher, can you pause for a second? While everybody's listening, and there's Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus.
Yes.
And Martha says, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to serve alone? And then she gives Jesus a command.
This is when the hands are on the hips.
The hands are on the hips. And Martha says, so tell her to give me a hand.
So Martha's going to tell Jesus what to do.
What to do. Jesus, your teaching is good, but I've got something to add. Tell Mary to get off her rear end and come give me some help in the kitchen.
Get on in here.
So if you are a parent out there, then this is not unfamiliar to you. Our kids do this all the time.
Sure they do,
right?
yeah.
And we can hear the voice of one sibling. Mom, my brother.
Yeah, sure.
I almost said his name in our house, but I don't want to do that. My brother is not helping me, do this. Or, Dad, sister is doing so like it is. It's petty. It's I don't know. It's silly, right? But again, it's also understandable.
Sure.
It's terribly understandable.
Yeah.
We all should sympathize with Martha. But Jesus answers her, and it's a deep emotional moment. We know that because Jesus uses her name twice. Martha, Martha. There's other times when he does this. Luke 22:31, Simon, Simon. This is when Jesus tells Peter, Satan has asked for permission to sift you like wheat.
Yeah.
But I've prayed for you that your faith will not fail. So deep, heavy, emotional moment. Again, Luke 13:34, just a little bit after this. It's also recorded in Matthew 23:37. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, Jesus is looking at this city that represents the chosen people of God. He says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often I wanted to gather you under my wing like a hen gathers her chicks, right?
Sure.
But you would not have it. And therefore the day of destruction is coming upon you, right?
When I read this, I think of kind of like when there's contention among the siblings.
Yeah.
And the parental unit is correcting one sibling.
Yep.
And the parental unit goes, in this situation, Martha. and when it's obvious that the child is not listening, you go, Martha.
Excuse me.
Yep. And that's what I feel when I read this. It's like Jesus goes, Martha, and she's not looking.
Right.
And he calls her name again.
Yeah.
And so
tell her to help me. That's all that Martha can see at this moment. So there's the two guys. And that also happens in corrective moments, right? Acts chapter 9. Saul's on the road to Damascus. This is also written by Luke. Acts is. Saul's on the road to Damascus on his way to hunt down and persecute Christians.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Right? So
that's good.
It comes up again and again. And what he says to Martha is, you are worried and upset about many things. What does do you have that in the ESV? What does the ESV say there in verse 41?
You're anxious and troubled about many things.
Anxious and troubled, worried and upset. I don't know, Matt, but that sounds like a lot of what characterizes our minds in 21st century America.
Yes. No
Anxious, upset, worried, troubled.
So elsewhere focused.
Yeah.
So distracted. So somewhere other than where I am.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's what I think Jesus is doing in just a moment. He's calling back to present.
That's right. That's good. Worried and upset about many things, the host responsibilities, right? Her sister's bad behavior that she perceives, which would have brought dishonor to their family. So she's worried about all these different things.
Yeah.
Notice the contrast, though. You're worried and upset about many things, but then turn around right away. But one thing is necessary.
Yeah.
There's only one thing that's necessary. Hey, don't lose the context. Remember back at the beginning of when I started rolling through this, we talked about this passage in Luke of the journey to Jerusalem and what it's all about. Discipleship, devotion, undistracted attention, right? Remember those individuals who Jesus called to follow him, and they said, well, let me go bury my dad, or let me say goodbye to my family, or who asked Jesus, let me follow you, and Jesus gave them a harsh response. Remember that, because in terms of one thing is necessary, when you ask the question, can I go and bury my father first? Well, one thing is necessary.
Yeah.
That may be a good thing, going and burying your father.
Yep.
One thing is necessary. Let me go say goodbye to my family before I come and follow you. That's not a bad thing to say goodbye to your folks. Your folks would appreciate that.
Sure.
One thing is necessary, right? So she's anxious and upset about many things. One thing is necessary. Jesus doesn't tell us what that one thing is. It's clear from the passage. But what he says is Mary has made the right choice, or literally, Mary has chosen the good portion, right? So it's like there's a pie on the table, and there's two halves of that pie, and Jesus is saying Martha has chosen one half of that pie, and it's no good. Mary has chosen the other half of that pie, and it's good.
Yeah.
and it's not going to be taken away from her.
Mm-hmm.
So no, Martha, as the Lord, I get to make the decisions about my teaching, right? No, Martha, I'm not going to tell your sister to get up and go help you in the kitchen. Because to be honest with you, it would be better for the turkey to burn and for...
Sister Schubert rolls to burn.
Yes. For the salad to get soggy. For the ice to melt, right, in the glasses. It would be better for those things to happen than for your sister to get up and not experience my teaching.
Yeah.
I mean, that's heavy. But what Mary has chosen, and this is what we've got to get, Mary has chosen intimacy with Jesus. And that's the one thing that we all need, right? Yeah. Now, there's redemption for Martha, because this story kind of moves right along. But if you go and you read John chapter 11, right, where Lazarus has died. Jesus is on his way to Bethany, but intentionally delayed his trip so that Lazarus would die first, so that Jesus could then raise him from the dead. Well, guess who's the first one to abandon the house, to not be distracted by her grief, to run and go meet Jesus on his way? And guess who it is?
Martha?
It's Martha. It's not Mary.
Yeah.
Mary stays home, and she's paralyzed by her grief. Now, she will come out.
Sure.
And this is, again, it's totally understandable. But Martha's the one who goes and runs to Jesus and then even says, I believe that you are, the Son of God, the Messiah, the Son of God. And she confesses that before Jesus. So it's just kind of a cool come around for the story, so to speak. In summary, a couple things that I think deserve to be said here. There's a great quote in the commentary section from Lifeway provided in your group material. And it says, for once, a person in need did not receive Christ's blessing. The need that they had was out of focus and misplaced. So for once, a person who needs something comes to Jesus, and Jesus just totally is like, I'm not helping with that.
Sure.
Jesus says elsewhere, there are certain things, his specific mention is the poor. There are certain things that are always going to be around on this side of heaven, right? The poor, liars and cheaters, death and taxes, the dishes and the trash. They're always going to be there.
Yep.
Jesus tells that person, this is another story that actually pertains to Mary and Martha. Hey, you're always going to have the poor with you. You're not always going to have me.
Yeah. So
focus on me, and let's take care of that intimacy with Jesus first, and even that recognition of like, hey, the Lord your God is in your midst. The food can take care of itself. The dishes can take care of themselves. So when you get that opportunity to spend time at the feet of Jesus, man, put everything else away. Yeah. And take advantage of that.
That's so good. As we look at the material and we think about our measure moment, I think of this through the lens. Let's ask this question: how's your focus? Right. So let's think of this from the perspective of looking through a camera lens. Right. So with our camera lens, we can, inside the frame are multiple items, but there's one item that we're focusing on.
Yeah.
And inside the frame of our life, the one thing that we ought to be focusing on primarily is our personal vertical relationship with God. But there are other things inside the frame. And so what I find happens as a Christ follower, even though Jesus is in the frame, oftentimes he's not the focus.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to adjust the little knob on the lens, and I adjust the focus. Yeah, Jesus is in the frame, but the thing that's off to the right in bottom side of the frame, that's what I'm focusing on.
Yep.
And so the question for us as believers, Jesus is in the frame. Yeah, he's in the house. Yeah. But where's my focus?
Yeah.
Am I sitting at the feet of Jesus?
That's so good.
So, life group leaders, that's a challenge as we think about being a child of God. Yeah, maybe he's in the frame, but is he in focus? And so, as we think about growing as a child who knows God, growing in our personal relationship with him, what do we need to do? What might we need to do to make sure that we're sitting at his feet regularly? Make sure that he is the focal point of our frame.
Yeah.
So
your relationship with Jesus should be the one thing that drives everything. So,
It's full circle there, huh?
full circle.
How about that? So how are we going to live this out?
A great point here. So in the busyness of this life, it's easy to be distracted by many things. Identify 2 ways that you can create space in your day to sit at Jesus' feet, abide, right, and listen to him. And then your live it out is do it. Do it. So, yeah, take that time, man, and don't settle for Sunday school answers, right? Like if it starts going around and people are like, read the Bible and pray, yes, when?
Yeah.
In the morning, in the evening, how are you going to cut it out to make sure that the distractions of life, which are many, don't prevent you from focusing in on that one thing?
So good.
And then do it.
So important that we apply this passage. That it's not just another really cool story that we hear,
right,
but we've got to apply the truth of God's word to our lives. So be certain to challenge your group to live this out. Thank you so much for doing that. Brian, thanks for joining us. Tim will be back with us next time around, and excited about that. A couple of announcements to keep this in front of us. Mother's Day. Woo! Can you believe that?
Man, we're going to do a parent commissioning, which you guys just did at Liberty. We're going to do that on Mother's Day, so we've got that coming up.
That is great.
Yep.
So Mother's Day is quickly coming up, and then also leaders help your group remember about the Friday night fellowship that's coming up for the women's ministry. They'll be doing a service project, making some blankets that'll be used from the Alabama Children's Home. So what a great ministry, and so encourage the ladies to participate in that. There's more information about that in your announcement sheet, and those you should have that information. So that'll be on the 16th from 6 until 8 p.m. here in the East Venue. I think they're going to eat breakfast and make blankets or something like that.
Nice.
It's going to be really
Sounds
cool.
Great.
So, hey, thanks for Brian for investing into our leaders to help us be prepared, as well as anyone else who's listening, as we look forward to the coming message and lesson that we have in Life Group. So, leaders, we look forward to seeing you on Sunday.